Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and welcome to the AI argument with myself, Justin Collery, and joined by our in-house doomer gloomer, Frank Prendergast. Frank, been a great week, not as good a week as I wanted. Um, I want to tell you a little story actually before we start. Did you
Yeah.
watch Breaking Bad?
Yes.
Okay, and they started to run out of money during one of the seasons. I can't remember which one it was. It was maybe season 3 or 4. And there was a whole. It was when they were making their product with Gus, the El Polo guy, the guy who did the chicken, and they had their underground bunker thing, and they ran out of money, as in the production company that made Breaking Bad ran out of money, and so there was a whole episode where they just stared at a fly that was annoying them in their underground bunker,
I
and
remember
I
that.
feel
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt for a second. So, is that true? I mean, sorry, I know it's true. I remember the episode, but is it true that it was because they ran out of money? I thought they were just being super arty. I thought they were just like, oh, let's be really creative here.
Yeah, that's what they told the creatives. To the real people like me, they ran out of money and they just didn't have any money to, film outside of this four-walled bunker
I
thing.
hated that episode so much.
It was the worst episode by
I was
far
like,
of a
get
great
back
show.
to the story.
Exactly, Frank. Get back to the story. That's how I feel. Still no GPT 4.01, 4.2, or 4.5 or 5 or anything. Nothing. There wasn't even any hype. There was no strawberry account on Twitter to keep me entertained during the week. This week has been the fly episode.
No
So,
conspiracy theories. That's probably what it is. OpenAI in their laboratories right now are too busy chasing flies that are annoying them to release any product.
on the upside, Frank, I'm very interested. Before we came on air, I sent you a link to a guy called David Shapiro. And if for the people who are listening, if you haven't heard of David Shapiro, check him out. He's brilliant. He does YouTube videos, he does podcasts, he does whatever, he does all these sort of things. He's a kind of a forward thinker kind of a guy. And his website is davidshap.io. I tell you something about him. On his YouTube videos, he actually dresses up in a Star Trek uniform, which means he's got balls way
Yes.
bigger than I do. Right? I'd love to do that.
Yes. I
He's
knew he
brilliant.
looked familiar, but
Yeah,
it's only now when you said about the Star Trek that I was like, oh yeah, I have watched his videos. Yeah.
that's what he does. But he's super interesting. Like he's a clever dude, and he's puts on videos about post scarcity and all sorts of things. But he has a calculator which we all can use now to calculate our p doom, so our chances of AI wiping us all out, and it's 100% reliable. And I know that for a fact because I did the test myself, and my P Doom is 1.3538%. That's four numbers after the decimal point, which means it's 100% accurate. In fact, it's
Has to
1,000%
be true.
accurate because it's got
If
four numbers after the
it's
decimal
got
point.
four after the decimal point, there's no question. That's definitely true. Yeah,
Frank, what's your
absolutely.
P Doom?
My P. So yours was what? What was it?
Let's be precise now, 1.3538%. I'm guessing you're going to be in 0.002% of mine.
And so that one does that mean, right, that that generally speaking, you think that there's just over a 1% chance of AI killing us all? Is that what the P Doom actually
Yes.
means? Okay,
Yes.
right. So yours is just over 1%,
I'm
1.3538.
an
Mine is. I'm surprised, and this is why I was checking what this number actually means, because mine seems
yeah.
very low for who I am. Mine is 13.05%, which is considerably higher than yours, which is,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
I would start to question his equation here,
Oh, it's
because
maths, isn't
I
it?
would expect mine to be a lot higher. And I read the article, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not a numbers guy. I read his article, I read the equation and everything, and I just didn't fully follow it. But I do remember he specifically said that it tends toward a lower number, which he feels is absolutely correct. I don't know why. I need to read the article again. Actually, I probably need to give the article to Claude and say, explain this to me, would you?
Yeah. Exactly. I think the reason is okay. Well, the reason he's got four questions. For the people who haven't seen this, he's got four questions, and the four questions are: do you think that artificial superintelligence is going to be invented in the next 10 years? Do you think that the artificial superintelligence is going to be agentic? So, is it going to be an agent that just can do things by itself? Uh, do you think it's going to be uncontrollable? So just go off and do its own thing? And do you think that it will be hostile to human existence? And I think that, okay, so the reason why it's going to tend, so even if you say it's 100% we're going to get ASI, 100% it's going to be agentic, and 100% that it's uncontrollable. If you think that but if you think it's 0% that it's going to be hostile to human existence, then your P doom is 0%. Like it's kind of a mathematical calculation where if any one of those you calculate to be low, then your risk is very low. But it's a lot of fun, Frank, and
It
it's
is.
totally.
It is a lot of fun, and I'm sorry, I'm just putting 100% into all of them there just to see. Yeah, okay.
Except for, oh,
Yeah,
Jesus Christ,
get
don't
it.
test me live on air, Frank. I mean, I just think things up. The trick is to sound confident.
One of the issues I had with doing it.
Yeah,
you get 100%. Yeah, so you're dead on. You're spot on.
yeah, yeah.
My issue with doing it, not so apart from my issue of like failing to understand how the algorithm works, my issue with actually doing it was that, you know, we talked a while ago about, I can never remember his name, Leopold Ashen.
Oh, Ashen.
Yeah,
You can't
exactly.
You don't remember it. Yes.
So, and his essays on situational awareness.
Yes.
And his point being that there's very few people on this planet right now who really understand what's going on and what's coming down the line, which makes it very, very difficult for, you know, me to sit here and go, will artificial superintelligence arrive within 10 years? Well, the bottom line is, how on earth would I know? So I'm kind of putting in figures based on, you know, what I've read about others' situational awareness. So it's fun. It's a lot of fun, but at the end of the day, for a lot of this stuff, even though I might be kind of, you know, tending towards the it's going to kill us all, I'm still kind of going, you know, it's a 50-50. It's a kind of a 50-50 chance.
It's not even 50-50, Frank. I mean, just to give yourself a little bit of credit, right? If I was going to get on a plane that was going to fly me to New York and I was told that there was a 1.3835% chance that it was going to crash on the way, I probably wouldn't get on the plane. I mean, that's a pretty big risk. And for sure, if somebody told you that your plane is going to crash 13% of the time, would you get in the plane?
Yeah, no, I mean, no, I don't think I'd be. Yeah, you see, I mean, I don't look these up. I don't even know what the actual percentages are of the risk of getting on a plane. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know the exact number, but it's got more than 4 numbers after the decimal point. It's like 0.00001% chance of crashing.
And I 100%, I sit on planes and I have that Fight Club moment. You know, the Fight Club moment where like you're sitting on the plane and all that's going through your head is the big hole ripping in the back of the plane and all the seats going flying out the back. That is my flying experience, absolutely, for sure. So,
as a total diversion, I have a little funny story for you, right? So I used to fly small airplanes as a sort of a fun thing to do, right? And so I know how to fly an airplane. So I thought, you know, instead of you get on the plane, right, and you're worried about the top of the plane flying off and blah, blah, all that sort of stuff, right? I think about both the pilot and the co-pilot having the fish, which was poisoned and dying midair, and the air hostess coming out and saying, oh my God, does anybody know how to fly a plane? And I would sort of, I've flown a small plane before, perhaps I could help, right? So there's an aircraft simulator down in Shannon that you can hop into to try flying a 737. So I went down and I booked some time in that simulator. I said, right, what I need you to do is I need you to put me in the middle of Ireland. Tell me where Shannon Airport is because I've landed in Shannon Airport. Don't do anything else, but you can tell me what to do, and I'm going to try and land the plane.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you your P doom should be about 99.9%. If you're stuck on the plane with me and nobody else is flying. We're all going to die.
Yeah, so but the bottom line is, this is a bit of fun. Everyone should definitely go and check out what their P doom number is, even if we're all just really making wild stabs in the dark at numbers here, because how on earth would we know? But I would be interested because I know there was some studies done a while back on like what the P doom numbers are for the AI community at large, what it averages out at. I haven't seen any updated figures on that for a while. They were pretty high. they were pretty
20%,
high.
I think, was about the average overall.
Right, which is considerable, you know.
Again, would you get into a
Yeah,
plane with a 20% chance of crashing? Probably not. Probably not. So anyway, you were interested this week with some of the guys from Google DeepMind.
yeah. So it was, I think it was Sean Hayes who listens into the AI argument. He tagged me in a post. It was an interview with one of Google DeepMind's, what was his name now? Douglas Eck. And
Yes.
he's a senior research director, and they were talking about AI and creativity, and it was a great conversation. It was just a really good conversation. Now,
Yep.
it's a DeepMind podcast, so it's a
Company sponsored.
yeah, exactly. However, I thought the podcast host, whose name I've forgotten, but she was brilliant. She asked some of the pretty tough questions, I thought, which was great.
Hannah Fry. She was a smart lady. Hannah Fry. She's a
100%.
fluid dynamics physicist. She is a clever cookie.
And she did not shy away from asking some of the tough questions. She did, I felt, allow him to skirt around them somewhat, but
Mhm.
I mean that's not surprising. Even in a non-branded podcast, a lot of the time the podcast host is not going to be overly adversarial.
Yep. If we
But
ever get guests, Frank, we're not going to be like that.
the what?
If we ever have guests, we're going to savage them.
Absolutely, we'd have to with a name like the AI argument. But it was late on in the podcast they started talking about things like remunerating creatives for their input and things like that, and I thought it started to get really interesting around then, and I would have loved a little bit more of a push on him, but some interesting stuff came out. So he maintained that Google. So first of all, he made the interesting point that Google have moved very slowly at times in this space because of their concern with societal impact, and so much so that like for a while there they really got left behind when they should have been way ahead of everybody, because they weren't
That's a
releasing.
very insider view, Frank. Right? He did put it in those terms. Many people, both from within Google and from without Google, would disagree with the fact that they slowed down because of their concern, and they would say maybe they slowed down because their organization just wasn't set up to innovate in the same way that other companies were. But
But
that's
even
anyway. I don't want to distract you.
no, but it's interesting because I think there's an example here, very much in the sphere of what we're talking about with creatives and everything like that. Like Google's Imagen, they released, I'm not going to remember the dates, unfortunately, but if you look up the dates of like the release of the paper of Imagen, it was doing incredible stuff. Google was doing incredible stuff in the text to image generation in AI. Long before like Midjourney, long before DALL-E was released, as far as I remember. And they were able to do things like generating text in images pretty early on, but they
Yes.
didn't release it. And then they ended up falling way behind in the end. But they had that tech, and the paper was released, and the images were released, but they did not release product. So I think there's a little bit of both going on here. I think that they were slow because of societal concerns, and they've said that that's come from some pretty senior Google people in the past as well. It's not the first time we're hearing that. I think you're right. In other spheres, there may have been just a bit of the kind of behemoth having trouble getting up to speed, or building up speed in particular areas. But I do think there is a little bit of that. I do think there is a little bit that they held back because they were concerned on things like image generation, video generation, stuff like that. But they got to talking.
Yeah, about this idea of royalties, right? So what
Yeah.
I'll do is, just for people who are listening, right, I will, because I know, right, I'm interested to hear your sort of view on it from a creative point of view, but I'll just describe for you the technical thing that he described, what he was saying, because it's kind of interesting, and for me, I think it's a bit depressing. But anyway, so everybody, I think, that has used AI will be familiar with retrieval augmented generation, right? So this RAG, where you have a corpus of 10,000 or a million documents, and you ask a question, and it creates a string of numbers, which we call a vector, right? And then what it does is it goes to that database, and you can pluck out the top 10 or the top 100 vectors which are closest to that vector which you have asked for. And so what he's, to my mind, what he's describing is that from a royalties point of view, what we would do is you, the user, would create some music, right, or an image or whatever it happened to be, and they would do the same process where they would turn it into a vector, so a string of numbers, and then they would go through all the creatives work, so your work as an artist, and it would find the creatives which are most close to this thing which AI has generated, and then you would get some of the royalties. And so that's what had to me how he described the mechanics, right, which I find personally interesting. And for me, that was depressing because you've basically distilled Frank the artist down to a string of numbers. And I don't know, I think that's the whole thing, when you join a big company, you're just a number. Well, now you're all just numbers, according to Google. But that was it was a great take.
Yeah.
And I think it can be gamed, how has he described it there? But I'm interested to hear your thoughts, or what's your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are complicated. I mean, I think what you say there about being reduced to a string of numbers is interesting, because I came away from that talk and I was thinking about it, and I do think that AI has shown that creatives are not as special as we thought we were, or as humans being creative, we're not as special as we thought we were. We thought creativity was solely a human domain, and I just don't. I think that's been proven now that it's not. So we're not special and unique snowflakes after all. However, it doesn't mean that we're the interesting thing about the conversation to me was that we're not as special as we thought we were, but we're still special. And he made that point about, like, there's still a social contract, there's still a social element in the admiration of art. And also there is still a level of, human input and skill required for where we are right now, at least, in order to generate AI art or participate in AI generated art. The retrieval augmented generation thing is interesting. Because one of the things that bugs me about these companies is that it's a lovely thought, but where is it? It's a lovely thought, but where is this solution from Google? The only place, he talked about, he likened it to the whole streaming music thing, and where, we started with illegal things like Napster and whatever the other services were called, and then it developed into things like Spotify, etc. Now, some would argue that Spotify, etc., still isn't giving the royalties that it should compared to like CDs or records in the day. But then he said, YouTube sprang up, and it allowed people to interact directly with their audience, etc., etc. And he likened it to that. And I thought that was a bit of a stretch. But there are ecospheres like what he's talking about springing up. So I tested one recently called Latro, for example. And what they do is, as a creative, you can give them your style, and then someone can generate in your style, but you get a kickback of the money.
Yep.
But the big problem for me is what the interviewer on the podcast pointed out to him, and what I didn't feel like he addressed very well, which was, she said, well, has the horse not bolted? Because as things stand right now, you can go to a lot of these systems and say, create me an image in the style of whatever famous creator you want to pick. And I think that is the core issue here, is that, the horse has kind of bolted, because even if we take Latro, which I think is a great system and brilliant for certain people who might not know how to create a specific style, but for me as a creative person, it's, in a way, it's an added layer of complexity. I will just go straight to Midjourney and create from that. But her point is that Midjourney is built on all of this IP of creatives already. Yep. So, wow, I mean, it's just a really, really complicated area. And the bottom line is, I loved what he was saying, but it was just words. There is no real effort from Google to do this.
And friction, what you described there is friction, and friction is super important. So you're always going to go for the solution with least friction. And there was a couple of issues that I saw with what he said. The first is that when, citing YouTube as an example isn't it doesn't work in this instance because YouTube had a monopoly on the video market when they came out first. There was a couple of others, Vimeo. Whatever happened to Vimeo? Does it still exist? I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Filmmakers like it.
Do they? Good for them. And so there's YouTube had a virtual monopoly, right? So they could impose those standards, right? The takedown notices and whatever, but that doesn't exist in the music generation, right? So I don't see how you can enforce it. And we have all of these Grok 2 like open source models that aren't going to abide by the same rules. In fact, they take pride in not abiding by the same rules. So I don't see that it's going to happen, but it was very interesting. And he made another interesting point. He made a couple of. I loved his idea, right, where he said that he hoped the future of AI would be a future where video and sound is generated in real time. And he sort of made this analogy between he would go next door to his neighbor's house when he was a kid, and everyone would stand around a piano and play and sing songs together. And he hoped for a future where everybody would do the same, but it would always be like create your own story or write your own story, and you would have a video party with your friends. I mean, that's a nice future. I'm willing to sign up for that, Frank. I'll risk 1.3538% of doom just so I can write my own stories, in a video night with my buddy. So that was kind of cool. He said something very interesting then towards the end of the interview where he said, and this is interesting for many reasons. He said that sometimes, a thing that happens is, and Google do this already, especially during an election year, is they can tone down the results or they can tailor the results. And so one of the big concerns that you have about AI is societal impacts and how this will impact on society and human impacts and all that sort of snowflake stuff. And I would say to you, I would put it to you, Mr. Prendergast, that already happens with Google, right? They're clearly doing this already. In fact, he said they do it already on this podcast. And this very week, I found an instance of it where we had these amazing real life images and videos of Donald Trump, Kamala, and Elon Musk holding up I think it was a liquor store with an AK-47. And it was CCTV footage. Obviously, it wasn't like professional footage. It was brilliant. It was, I mean, if it wasn't those three, if it was three random people, I would have said it looked real to me. And it was all over my Twitter feed for about 2 or 3 days. And then yesterday, in preparation for this, I went to look for it, couldn't find it anywhere. Now, you did find it, but it just seemed that thing with Google pushing it down, that had happened with this particular video. I couldn't find it anywhere on X. Now, given that Musk was one of the ones committing the larceny, I'm not terribly surprised that X buried it. But Google, it looks to be buried.
But he's super. I mean, he would have difficulty taking that down, wouldn't he? After he's been retweeting kind of similar stuff, deepfake Kamala Harris voices, and it would be super hypocritical of him to take down the AI generated video of him holding up a liquor store.
Yeah, he doesn't have to take it down. He can just bury it. Just put it low down in the rankings, make it hard to find. You can do all sorts of dirt tricks.
And they were interesting because the images were generated with Grok, and the creators of the videos thanked Grok for allowing them to have some fun, versus say, like, I would not be able to generate those images in Midjourney, for example, because it would just say this is unsuitable content that we cannot generate for you. And then I think they took those images and used Kling, the image to video generator, to create the videos.
Yeah. But Frank, you're worried. I mean, one of the things that you worry about is a future where we are already in the future. You cannot believe a single image that you see. That is the world. That basically my message to you is that's what we have learned this week. The images are photorealistic. If you see a picture of something, it's certainly in a couple of months from now, when people generate more and more and more of these images, you have to start to assume that the image is not real. So this is it. We're in the future already.
And I mean, the incredible thing is we're there already, and they're just getting better all the time. So we also had Ideogram version 2 come out just recently.
Amazing. Those pictures, just for anybody who hasn't seen them, there was one picture. It was a picture of a woman's face, and you could see the reflection. I think it was almost of the camera in her eye. I zoomed into the eye as close, and just the detail. There was no way that I could tell that that was an AI generated image. Could you?
I'm not sure if I saw that particular one. I mean, I was interested when Ideogram came out with version 2, because one of the reasons that I always keep an eye on them is that they are like head and shoulders the best image generator for generating text. So I immediately went over to version 2 and tried a few complicated text things to see how it did. I was actually slightly disappointed because I think their overall quality of images has vastly improved, because I would only have gone to them for text generation previously. Now I would go to them for image generation as well. It has been a huge leap forward. The bit I was disappointed in was the text generation is maybe only like slightly better, if that. And I was kind of hoping that because that was their differentiator, that they would like make another massive leap in that area, but that doesn't seem to have happened.
Yeah.
But
I will say,
they're still the best.
oh yeah, I mean those pictures are amazing. I would say, because the thing that came out from what you're saying there, and from what the DeepMind interview, they went through some of the prompts that they had to generate the samples which they were showing. The prompts for images and videos in particular are quite long and quite detailed. And so there is clearly a skill that I don't think you can replicate, because you have to get something from inside your head onto a computer screen. And that's not something that everybody can do. And it's not something that you can offload to a computer, right? You can't read my mind yet. So,
No, but you can. I do think that tools like ChatGPT can massively help. So, for example, let's say you wanted a um, a photograph in a particular style. If you can source anything close to that style, you can pop that into ChatGPT and say, describe this image to me. And then immediately you have a visual language coming back that maybe you wouldn't have. So, when I was in art college, I absolutely hated the fact that I had to write essays and justify my work and talk about my work. I just wanted to scribble stuff, and that was it.
yeah,
But now I'm actually quite grateful for it, because I can go to Midjourney and I can describe what I want because I have that visual language. Now anybody can have that visual language because they can have ChatGPT analyze it for them and then pull the phrases that they want into the image generators.
that's a brilliant idea.
So there is, I think creatives have an advantage because they know it inherently, but I also think anybody can do it now because of AI as well. Like anyone can get a lot closer.
Interesting. I hadn't thought of doing that. That's a really good idea. Frank, so just remind me again, what was your P doom?
It was about, what was it, 13%? Was it about 13%?
13%. And you know that on this show we like to end with a fluffy cats type story, something to put a smile on your face, set you off on the weekend. I'm hoping to put
What?
another zero. I'm hoping to put another zero on the left hand side of the decimal point for your P doom. So
Right. So I'm going to be
did you,
130%. I'm going to be
yeah,
130% after hearing this
you're gonna
story. Oh my
do
God.
130%. Yes. So did you ever watch Judge Judy?
I have accidentally seen episodes of Judge Judy.
It's one of my favorite shows. Judge Judy was
Really?
just the best. The judgment is real. Sorry, the court is real. The judgment is final. That was Judge Judy. And as we've discussed before, I'm a big fan of getting rid of judges and using AI instead to do it. But this week we had a company called Shield AI, incredibly impressive, and their tagline reminded me of Judge Judy. Their tagline is "Real jets, real autonomy." So what they had was 4 fighter jets, 2 of which were piloted by humans and 2 of which were controlled entirely by AI. And let me give you the tag for this. In a groundbreaking series of tests this July, Shield AI demonstrated the future of air combat. High performance, autonomously controlled MQM 178 Firejet drones alongside human piloted jets in tightly confined airspace, collaboratively executing complex maneuvers with precision. Now, I get that gets me excited on a Friday evening.
That is terrifying. That is terrifying.
You can imagine, Frank, swarms of AI-controlled jets flying across the Ukraine, taking out targets of the bad guys somewhere far away. No humans, except the bad ones, are in danger.
Yes,
What's not
and
to like?
yes, and we've had this conversation before. Like, you are okay with this as long as you get to pick who the bad humans are, right?
Yes, obviously,
Yeah,
yes. Yeah. And I
yeah.
think the AI would agree with me.
I see some issues with this. On the plus side, it brings us, full circle to that whole thing of my PDOM being very, very high, even if I'm on a flight with you, even though you've flown a small jet. But
Sadly,
apart from fighter jets, if AI could just safely land in the case of an emergency, I'd be very happy with that. I'm not so sure about autonomous killing. Yeah,
we'll get
I
there,
think
Frank. I'm working on you. We'll get there.
I,
Frank,
th- I think we can find fluffier stories to end on next week.
I don't know what you don't like about that. If that doesn't warm the cockles of your heart, Frank, you're a cold, cold man. Frank, until next week, again, we wait. Hopefully, Sam is watching the show and please, just release something, anything. It's not that
Stop,
dangerous. Just give it
stop
to us.
chasing that fly in the basement.
Brilliant, Frank. We talk to you
Talk
next
to you
week.
soon. Cheers.